All right. Okay. Hey, welcome back, guys. Welcome back to Getting in Tune. As always, Aaron Lynch, and today I wanted to discuss a band that really isn't talked about as much as they should be. Um, I mean, it's probably surprising that I chose this band in and of itself uh, that I'm gonna discuss, but they're definitely. I wouldn't say they're underrated. However, they're just really not in the discussion of the quote great bands. Um, but that band is The Clash. Um, before I say anything, The Clash probably is my favorite or one of my favorite band names. I mean that it has to be one of the coolest band names out there. Um, but I wanted to talk about a specific album by the band. Um, it's one of my favorite albums of all time, and it's often regarded as one of the greatest albums of all time. I think Rolling Stone magazine ranked it like 15 or 14 on their greatest 500 greatest albums of all time list or whatever. I mean, I don't love Rolling Stone in their lists because they're not, you know, they don't mean anything. But anyways, the album is London Calling. Um, and it's a pretty darn great album. It's definitely iconic would be an understatement. Especially the album cover. Despite what you see on the cover, however, the cover is a picture of the bassist Paul Simonon um, smashing his bass. Um, despite that picture, the album is not this punked out expression of rage. But anyway, before we dive into the album, the Clash is a punk rock band from they um they formed in the mid '70s and they disbanded in the mid '80s. 1985 was their or '86 was their last year as a band, even though only one member that's not true. Two members were um were in the band the entire time. Um but they formed in the mid '70s, '75, maybe '76. And their first album, I believe, came out in either '76 or '77, and that was just their self-titled debut, which is a very good record, very good punk rock record, very straightforward. You know that classic punk rock sound, just sort of that dirty, raw, um, very. It's not really produced well at all, but that's sort of what makes punk rock sound like punk rock. But good nonetheless. But like I said, very simplistic, very straightforward. Um, they always had a great sound from their first album. That probably has to um, that's probably because of Joe Strummer. He has an amazing voice. It's not really a punk rock voice. That's why he sounds so unique. And Joe Strummer is the lead singer and rhythm guitarist. He is left-handed for pretty much everything he does except playing guitar. And the bassist of the Clash, Paul Simonon, states that that's what gave him his um, unique picking style, I guess, or unique rhythm when playing guitar. I think that's pretty interesting because he is very unique in the way he plays and the way he sings. Um, but their first album came out in '76. Second album came out or no, first album came out in '77. Second album came out in '78, which is called "Give 'Em Enough Rope," which is very different than the first album. It's definitely more mainstream, more commercial sounding. It sounds like more of just a rock record that you would hear um, from any band in the late '70s, but it's good. You know, it's not a generic sort of the songwriting isn't like too generic. And it's very good. They were definitely branching out on that album. Like I said, they were going for more of a rock, commercial rock sound. You know, straying away from the first album, their sort of punk roots, which is good. I thought that was great. However, it's not until their um, third album, uh, London Calling, that they really start experimenting in a crazy way. They start dabbling in, I'd say, probably a dozen different genres. It's insane what they do on that album. Um, it was definitely a step forward from, you know, just what they were trying to do on, giving 'em give 'em enough rope, where on Give 'Em Enough Rope, um, sure, it sounded different than punk rock, but it was still just a pretty straightforward record, plus it was only 10 songs or something like that, maybe not even. Um, so yeah, very commercial. It didn't really sell that well. Neither did their first album really, especially not in the US, but like I said, it wasn't until London Calling where pretty much everything changed. Um, London Calling was described, by Rolling Stone as, quote, um actually, no, this is Give 'Em Enough Rope, excuse me, "Straight English punk with a grip on the future." And I believe that to be very true because, Give 'Em Enough Rope was a large step towards, um, what they were about to do in the next, well, actually throughout the rest of the band's, existence, really. Um, so the band was obviously looking, to, evolve and, develop their sound in a more sort of mature, and a more mature way, and they were really trying to push the limits of what they were capable of doing musically, um, which is always amazing. But the band went out on tour, in 1979, that's right, and, they w they had very obscure supporting acts. They had people like, um, Bo Diddley, Lee Dorsey, and, Joe Ely, which are, I mean, if you know those artists, they're nowhere near punk rock, nowhere near the age of The Clash at the time. It was very, you know, it was an odd choice, but also at the same time, it's something The Clash would do, no question about that. So naturally, they were exposed to a wide, variety of, different styles of music, um, which undoubtedly influenced, their next album, London Calling. Um, but the, primary songwriters of the band at the time were, Joe Strummer, whom I mentioned, the lead singer and, rhythm guitarist, and also, Mick Jones, who was the, lead guitarist, and also he was a vocalist too. He sang on a few songs. He sang on, actually some of their biggest songs. If you really look at it, he sang on, "Should I Stay or Should I Go," which is probably I'm sure everybody knows that song. Um, but yeah, he sang on some great songs, some that we'll talk about too. Um, but both of them were having a severe writer's block. Um, by 1979, neither of them had written a song at that point in like over a year or something crazy like that. Um, so when the time came for them to get back in the studio, they really had a small amount of material. So what they started doing really just for practice, they weren't really thinking about, the what they would be creating for an album. Just for practice, they started covering songs, but they were not covering anything related to the music that they were making, which again was going to influence the album they were about to make. They were covering, reggae tunes, they were covering, rockabilly tunes, old rock and roll tunes, some funk sort of stuff, and that was pretty much what ended up on London Calling, believe it or not. Um, they were covering a song in the studio called, "Brand New Cadillac" by Vince Taylor, and that's um, an old rockabilly tune from the late '50s, and they just used that song to warm up in the studio before shows, and they literally said that this is too good, so they just threw it on the album. It's the 2nd song on the album. Um, so they were starting to dabble in styles of music that were not punk rock, yet at the same time doing that thing in and of itself, dabbling in all these, that's pretty punk rock if you ask me. But if you look at the track listing on the album, if we go through it, um, you start off with London Calling, the song, which is probably the most, or one of the most, punk, quote unquote, punk sounding songs on the album. There aren't many, ironically. If you look at the or if you listen to the whole album, you don't really hear much of what was on Give 'Em Enough Rope and their first album at all. There's really no, even like a straightforward, cut and paste sort of Ramones or Sex Pistols style punk song. There's really none on the record at all. London Calling comes pretty close, but still, it's something more than that. There's another level of complexity to it. Um, th London Calling is a very foreboding song. It's a great opening song for the album. It definitely sets the tone for the entire record. Um, and then right after that is Brand New Cadillac, the, Vince Taylor song, which is the Vince Taylor version is great. The Clash version is so much, darker. It's really fast and sorta heavy and, um, again, great tone setting songs for the record. Um, and then after that, you had Jimmy Jazz, which this is the first sort of you listen to those 2 songs, the avid, Clash fan at the time, listening to it for the first time, and they're like, "Alright, yeah, this is great. This is, like, what I'm used to. This is like that the same old Clash, can't go wrong." But then you have a song after that like Jimmy Jazz, which is pretty much just this rock, jazzy, weird tune, but it works so perfectly. Um, and then after that, you have another sort of punky style song, called "Hateful," um, which is very catchy. It has a real feel-good melody, just it really has you singing along by the end of that song. Um, and then after that, you have a song called "Rudy Can't Fail," which is just this straight, you know, straightforward reggae tune, sort of funk reggae tune, which, um, by the way, I forgot to mention, The Clash are a very, political band, but they do it in a very smart way. They're not really, it's not like a Rage Against the Machine um, type political group where they're just outright saying, the things they don't like and, cursing out any politician they want. Um, Clash have very smart lyrics and they put across their message in a great way. And one of those ways being using all these different styles of music on the same record. This record's also 19 songs uh in it's 19 songs long. There's 19 songs on it. It's a double album. They wanted to do that on purpose just to give their fans 2 albums for the price of 1. That was literally the whole, um, idea behind the record, or one of the ideas. Um, anyway, "Rudy Can't Fail" is, like I said, this sort of, um, reggae tune, and Rudy the term Rudy isn't a name, which I found out it's short for the term rude boy, which is a term for, um, the first English generation of, uh, people that were born, um, from Jamaican parents, and they were, facing a lot of discrimination at the time, and, so, The Clash said, "We gotta make a song about this," so they did, and it's amazing, and again, the song right after that, "Spanish Bombs," is another sort of political one about, I forget the whole history behind that song, but there was a huge bombing going um, on one of the coasts of Spain, and, um, Joe Strummer literally said, "I have to write a song about this," and he did, and it was amazing, and Spanish Bombs is sort of this, um, fun, sort of just fast-moving so there's an acoustic guitar on it, it's very sort of lilting and light, and it's just a great fun song to just sort of just put on and enjoy, and then And then after that, you have a really interesting song called, "The Right Profile," which was written by, I believe this one was written by Mick Jones, the guitar player. Um, and this is the first time on the whole album you hear a horn section. I mean, at this point, you're probably like, I don't even know what this album is anymore." Um, and that's kinda what they were trying to do. They were kinda just they were trying to throw everything at you at once. And, but they did it in a great way because it works. There are too many artists that make records or make a record, and then the other record is something totally different, and it all just becomes so convoluted. But I couldn't even tell you how The Clash does it because there are so many styles of music on this album. You know, I've mentioned, reggae, funk, rockabilly already, and this is a punk band. Um, anyways, so that's the first time you're hearing a horn section on a Clash record, um, which I think is amazing. And then after Right Profile, you have a song called, this is one of my favorite Clash songs, probably my favorite on the album, maybe my second favorite, song called Lost in the Supermarket, which is sort of just this, fast-moving sort of, I wouldn't call it a ballad. I don't think it's right to say a punk band has a ballad, but, I guess it's sort of the, slower song on the album, the moodier song on the album, but it's fun. It's literally just about a guy being lost in the supermarket. People either say it's like some comment on consumerism at the time, and other people are just saying that it literally has no meaning. It's just about a guy being lost in the supermarket, which I think that's about knowing Mick Jones, the guitar player, because he wrote this one too. I typically tend to like the songs that Mick Jones wrote and sang, um, over those of Joe Strummer, even though Joe Strummer's amazing. Um, Lost in the Supermarket's a highlight of the album. It's just sort of this fun, easy song to listen to in the middle of all these, political songs. They were trying to do that too. And then after that, you have a song called Clampdown, which is pretty much the complete opposite of Lost in the Supermarket. Sort of this heavy, this is a punkier song. Again, none of these songs are really like the stuff that's on their first album. Um, but it's sort of this fun hard rock, um, headbanger, yet it's also so catchy. Um, this one's very political too, but that's the thing, like, they make these songs where it's like I mentioned a band like Rage Against the Machine, and I have nothing against them, but some of their politics can just sort of dilute the songs, just sort of take away from the music, which is sort of the best part about that band. Um, The Clash, it doesn't take away, you sort of have to almost sort of dig for the meaning, which I think is sort of the best part to any good song, something that's not really blatant and in your face, especially when it's political. But Clampdown's a super fun song. Like Lost in the Supermarket, though, this is much heavier um, and yeah, that's, Clampdown. And then the song after that is a really, is a this is a great song, Guns of Brixton, which is a super, super dark, foreboding, just amazing song. It has a lot of it's a straight up reggae song. I mean, that's what it is, but it has a super strong, bass line. The lyrics are really just, like I said, dark and, um, pretty scary too. Um, but this is the first song on the album. This is the first Clash song written entirely by the bassist, Paul Simonon, who, he did a pretty darn good job because this, in my opinion, is one of the best Clash songs. Definitely, I don't know every single Clash song. I've listened to most, but I could probably say this is their darkest song for sure. So Guns of Brixton is a great song. I don't know what it's about exactly. Like I said, a lot of the lyrics are, a little abstract, like I said, which is a great thing. But I can't really talk about what Guns of Brixton is about. Um, and there are a lot of other, I ran through probably, I don't know, 7 right there or something like that. 8, 19 songs on this album. It's a double album. It's a long album, which is amazing. My favorite song on the album is, the last the very last song on the album, which there's a pretty interesting story, that I think it's interesting behind this song. The song is called "Train in Vain." Um, Again, written by Mick Jones, the guitarist, lead guitarist. What happened was they were making the, uh double out. They were making a double album, and they couldn't. They were pretty much short on time on the length of the album. They came up short where they just the either the record company. I'm sure it was the record company said the album's not long enough to be um a double album. You need at least one more song. And at that point, the album cover, the album art was already finished. Um, the the back cover was all finished. The track listing was ready, printed, and in so they had no choice but to add another song. Otherwise, the record wouldn't be released as a double album, at least. Um, so Mick Jones just decided to write a song real quick, um, pretty much reluctantly. He wasn't trying to write any masterpiece, but he ended up writing one of the best Clash songs, in my opinion. It's my favorite Clash song. Um, and that's how some of the best songs are made. Just really writing a song just in the spur of the moment, and that's sometimes an artist's best work. Um, it's Train in Vain. It's about it's a simple sort of it's kind of even hard to call it a rock song. It's more of a pop song, pop rock. Um, and it's just the probably Clash's catchiest song. Like I said, I don't know every single Clash song, but that's up there with like Should I Stay or Should I Go and Rock the Casbah. I mean, that's among one of their catchiest songs, if not their catchiest. And it's a simple, love song. Um, Mick Jones was um, being his wife was or his girlfriend, I believe, was cheating on him. So he just wrote, like just like a classic, breakup song, and it's some of the simplest songs are the best for most of these artists. It's not like they have to be um, super out there with a song like Right Profile or Rudy Can't Fail, with these horns and these crazy reggae, rhythms. Um, this is one of their best songs, and it's just the simple, love song about a guy breaking up with his girlfriend. Short song too. Lyrics are really simple. There's like 2, 3 chords in the whole song. It's just, you can't go wrong with songs like that sometimes. That's Train in Vain. And because they like I said, they wrote the song reluctantly for the most part, only because they needed to fill time on the album, and the covers were already printed. The whatchamacallit, the title of the song still doesn't appear on pressings today on the back cover. So it stops. So the last song listed would be the 18th song, Revolution Rock. So the Train in Vain is kind of a hidden track, almost you could say. It's not listed, it's not credited. Um, I thought that was really interesting. Um, Figuring I have the album too. When I got the album, I was like, why is my favorite song not on here? I was a little PO'd, but it's on there. It's definitely on there. So yeah, Train in Vain's definitely one of the Clash's best songs by far. Um, but that's London Calling. I mean, you have a lot of other. Um, I hesitate to use the word weird because that can sometimes have a negative connotation, but there are a lot of weird songs, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just there are a lot of different styles. There's really something um, for anyone and everyone on this album. I truly believe because it's a punk record in the sense that their attitude is not um, let's stick to one uh, style of music, being punk. Um, which is great. That's kind of what the Clash is all about. And their next record, Sandinista, which came out in 1980, so a year later, they were basically releasing an album every year, um, was even crazier. That was a triple album that had like 36 songs on it or something crazy like that. Um, every song kind of like stranger than the next in a good way. I mean, on there they dabbled in even weirder stuff. And then you had Combat Rock after that, which is kind of the same thing. They were Yeah, on those two records, they weren't really drawing inspiration from other genres, whereas they were sort of making their own sort of weird songs that you can't really pinpoint on. You can't really label them with any sort of genre, but songs like Straight to Hell on Combat Rock or Know Your Rights. It's like I couldn't even tell you what, like, if you asked me what genre those songs are, I couldn't tell you. I mean, they're punk, but they don't really sound like the Ramones or, the Misfits or anything like that. So Clash is a very interesting band. And London Calling wasn't it was their best album critically. Um, However, I don't believe it was their highest selling album, even though it should be. I think that I think that goes to Combat Rock because that did have the band's biggest hits on it, being Rock the Casbah and Should I Stay or Should I Go, which are undeniably amazing. But those are I mean, their best work is really, in my opinion, London Calling. It's a masterpiece to say the least. It's one of the best albums of all time. That's objective. That's not my, even though I agree, it's not my opinion. Um, yeah, it's an amazing record. The Clash was definitely, in my opinion, um, the best punk band out of England. Because people will argue the Ramones, which I can't argue that, but they're definitely better than the Sex Pistols. Both as songwriters and musicians. The Clash was uh, a brilliant band. They, like I said, they disbanded in 1985 or 86. Their last album, Cut the Crap, came out in 85, and that was a total flop critically and um, among fans. Like no one. That album was at that point. Mick Jones and the drummer Topper Headon were fired. So it was just Joe Strummer and Paul Simonon, and they hired two other guitar players and a drummer. And so, at that point, whenever a band does that, it's never a great sign. And on that album, they were sort of dabbling in, they're known for drawing inspiration from other genres, but at that point, they were dabbling in like techno and sort of dance music, and that's where it got a little too much, and everybody was just sort of turned off by it. And eventually, in '86, they disband. But in their prime, the Clash, I think, is unbeatable. London Calling is a perfect record. Um, like I said, despite how diverse it is and how all over the place it is stylistically, it's fun, engaging, and it's always an enjoyable record. That I think, like I said, anybody can love. Anybody can find something they love on it. Um, because there's a lot to offer on there. And yeah, that's London Calling by The Clash. And The Clash, if you have not, if you're a punk fan and you don't like The Clash, then you're not a punk fan because The Clash is, like I said, one of the best, if not the best. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. That was my those are my thoughts on The Clash. Those are my thoughts on um, London Calling. Um, and yeah, thank you for tuning in. I've been Aaron Lynch. This is Getting in Tune, and that was London Calling by The Clash.